didn't have to do anything other than talk. And then mute myself for myself.
Yep. Yep. You would ask how you would act exactly like how they would.
Okay. And then I can just close this out. Minimize it so I don't see it.
Oh, that one. Yes. You actually probably don't even have to run that on the website.
Yeah,
Because this is just running.
yeah, I'll just,
As long as this application's open, doing it.
We're going to call the meeting to order. Roll call. Here. Present.
Myself. Mr. Hillman.
Present.
I know he said he was here. Mrs. Callan? Here. Mrs. Lammel? Here. Mrs. Petropoulos absent.
Tonight in the audience, we have our administrative team, as well as Corey from Studio GC, and some of our maintenance crew, and Gino from the technology. We have no awards and recognition tonight, and we have no presentations as well. So I'm going to turn it over to 4.0.
Okay, 4.0 approval of the consent agenda. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Mr. Hillman? He said yes. Mrs. Petropoulos absent. Mrs. Callan?
Aye.
Mrs. Lammel?
Aye.
Ms. Davenport?
Aye.
Mrs. Egan?
Aye.
5.0 superintendent's report.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. I have a few items to run through today. The first one you'll see in your packets, the school department reports. Last week and the week before that, we were able to host some pop-up parties at all three of our buildings. And at the elementary level, our students received their Bernie's books, which we get every year. So that was absolutely great to be able to send them home with some books that are brand new, and watching them kind of smile, you can tell under their mask as they were walking away, was great. And at the junior high, they had a kind of a popsicle party, making sure they distance and just to kind of see some of their teachers that they've been seeing online for such a long time. And those plans were put in place well before we were even watching the metrics. So it was great to have them come in and spend some time over outside the buildings. Next up is our enrollment report. The September enrollment was 1,447. That's an increase of 8 students from last month. We are down 12 students from last year. So holding pretty steady at this point. 5.3 is the PTA report. A couple weeks ago on Friday, September 25th, the PTA had their virtual bingo night. And I know I see some people here who had both themselves and their kids on. And the kids who were taking part had a great time. I know my kids really enjoyed it, and just seeing the kids kind of interact a little bit online was a lot of fun. So that was their first event of the year. The next one is going to be on Friday, October 23rd, and that will be a scavenger hunt that they will be running. So that's the next event from the PTA. Moving on to 5.4, vacant positions and possible staffing needs. We are still looking for a lunch hostess float. We also, now that we are returning in person, we'll be looking at filling some paraprofessional positions that we did not fill while we were in the remote setting because they were not needed. But we are looking at filling some of those, as well as a 4-5 special education teacher. And we also are always looking for sub-custodians. So if anyone knows of anyone who's interested in that position, it's something that we are constantly looking to fill. 5.5, update on in-person and remote learning numbers. We obviously had the survey go out, and we had very good turnout as far as parents filling it out on time. I put in your pack the August numbers and the October numbers, and you'll see that there was a shift, more people going remote at this time, and we heard a couple different reasons for that. Some of it was the model, that it didn't work for them. Some of it was, especially at the junior high, we heard the remote learning went a lot better for their students than they had anticipated. And so they decided to keep them remote learning for now. But the increase for remote learning, there was a 13% change at Findlay, an 8% change at Lawn, and a 3% at Ridge Central. So those were the increases to that. What was really exciting is today was our first day of inviting students back in the AM/PM model. And so we had pre-K, kindergarten, and 6th grade students, both in the morning and the afternoon, as well as some special ed students and English learners. And it was great talking with the administrators after school and talking with teachers. And everyone was really, really tired, including the students, but it was good tired. It wasn't staring at a computer screen all day tired. And just I got to talk with a lot of the 6th graders as they were getting ready to load the bus, and they were saying how awesome it was and they can't wait to come back tomorrow. So that was really nice to hear. Obviously, there's always some kinks that you need to work out. I know we had some scheduling things at Findlay that we're still working through, and just kids making sure they were on the right bus, but we had everything listed and lined up and just had to direct them in the right area. So overall, a great first day. I do think it was good for the students and the staff to bring in a small amount of kids those first couple days before we're going to welcome back anyone else who wants to do in-person learning on Monday, October 19th. So any questions of how today went or the numbers? Ms. Davenport?
I was just curious, did we actually reach out proactively to the families that chose to not come back this time, that chose to come back the first time, to see what the reasonings were? Or was that just based on people who contacted you?
That was based on people who either contacted myself or the principals. Because it was a short time, they got a lot of questions about like, how is it going to work? Things like that. And those were things that came up in the conversation. Any other questions about the numbers or our first day today? All right, next up, another thing impacted by the pandemic, our III conference, which usually takes place right the week before Thanksgiving. It has been canceled for this year, but they are still having the Iasb Delegate Assembly, which will be held virtually on Saturday, November 14th. And later in the meeting tonight, we will need to nominate a representative along with an alternate in case the representative can't attend that day. Both will be registered in case that there is a change at the last second. And really whoever's chosen, I know Lori will get them signed up, and then you just have to kind of watch for your email for any updates that they may send. So I don't know if we want to talk about who might be interested or who we want to nominate for those positions.
Nancy normally does it.
She has, yes. Yep.
But unless somebody feels strongly, I would suggest we nominate Nancy. And if she doesn't want to or can't, then one of us, whoever is the second.
I have no issue with that.
So Nancy is the main person? Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Well, who's paying that? Anything from Christian?
And who would we like to put as the alternate?
I'll do that. That's fine.
Are we okay with that?
I don't have an issue with that either.
All right, so when we vote on it later, we will be nominating Nancy with the alternate as Tiffany. For 5.7, professional development with Dr. Elaine Roberts. Later on in the meeting, we'll be looking at approving a contract with Dr. Roberts. And I've only had a chance to work with Dr. Roberts for a little over a year now. And I've been really impressed with what she has brought to our district and our students and working with them in the classroom and really just that coaching with the teachers. She has built such a positive rapport with them while also challenging them. And I think that's the key, that she's built that trust with them, but also knows when to push them out of their comfort zone. And so Dr. Roberts had worked for another company for a while. She is now working on her own. And we had used her for the first couple days for the remote learning and to try to work with teachers on how to really up their game in areas. And I know they really appreciated that. And that's something we'd like to continue having her do and really just offer the coaching for things that our administrators might see that they want our teachers to work on. And there's a lot of times when they're working with her that they ask for certain things, which is exactly what you want from a coach. So we'll be asking for approval of that contract for the remainder of the year. And then my last item under superintendent's reports is the official summative evaluation from the Illinois State Board of Education. So every year we know we took part before, now we take IAR, Illinois Assessment of Readiness. Last year with the pandemic, we had some of our students start on the test and then it just stopped. Some kids never even got a chance to start. And the state applied for a waiver like all 50 states in the country, and that waiver was granted. So what the state did is they just rolled over all of the designations from last year, have stayed the same this year. So all three of our schools are commendable, which is excellent. And there's 4 different tiers that you have. Exemplary is the highest, and then commendable, and then needs improvement, and then underperforming. So all 3 of our schools have hit commendable, and that has rolled over. Now, there has been a lot of talk in Springfield and across the country of what's going to happen with the test this year. Some schools aren't opening. The earliest they've said they're going to do is January. Some schools are doing remote learning very well. Others are still sending packets home across the state. So what is that test really going to look like? And at this time, the Secretary of Education has said that all states will be required to take the test, that there will be no waivers sent out. And so that's what we have to assume at this time. If there are any changes as the year goes on, I will kind of keep everyone apprised, but we are assuming that we will be taking that test sometime in March or April this year. So that's all I have at this time for superintendent reports.
Okay, we'll try it again. Okay, first item on the agenda is our first quarter interest in township costs. I'm happy to report that the interest earned on our fund balances for the first quarter was $30,321, and the township costs associated with those is $17,265. The next item is a little housekeeping. Every year we need to present to the Board of Education any contract over $25,000 that we entered into for the prior year. So in your packet, you see that listed, and after tonight's meeting, that will be posted on the district website. The next item is capital projects, and I kind of assume that this is going to be a standing item on the business manager's report, because we really have a lot of exciting projects coming up and a lot to do with that. So if you recall, back in September, Pat Callahan and Corey Boaz with Studio GC presented the district with the time frame for the capital projects. And so the first key date on that would be today, when we would be asking the Board of Education to approve Studio GC to start the design process for all of those individual projects, along with allowing them and authorizing them to go out to bid on the district's behalf. And in addition to the capital projects, we've been having conversations about the Ridgeline Playground, and we are, nowhere close to being finished with that. We have a lot of conversations to go, but we'd also like to give Studio GC the opportunity to start designing that plan, bringing it back to the board, allowing us to ask questions, and then also eventually going out to bid for that. So we would be asking the board to approve both of those later in the meeting. Okay, and then the next one is a digital equity formula grant. In the beginning of the school year, we were awarded money from the CARES grant, and this is money left over from the CARES grant. So the district actually received an additional $106,000. And this grant was earmarked for digital equity. And that could be in the terms of devices used by our students and staff, and connectivity issues. And when I went over the budget, I just highlighted, we didn't give any details, but in speaking with the administrators and the teachers, one thing that's always been lacking is iPad and devices appropriate for our early learners. And so with that, a grant that's in your board packet, we will be getting iPads for our kindergartner and first graders, along with the grant will also pay for some of the wireless hotspots that we've actually been using since March of 2020. So that is a one-time grant, and I think we'll be putting that to some really good use for our younger students.
If you don't mind me interrupt, I just wanted to point out that we do know that many of these technology pieces, as Gino knows, are way on back order. We are still waiting on Chromebooks that were ordered months and months ago. So we don't anticipate these coming right away. And it's important for us to know. Hotspots have been coming. We've been able to get those basically as soon as we order them, but we are going to be waiting on some of the other equipment. So.
As long as all those things are ordered and everything, though, that money is considered spent, and we don't have to worry about like getting some kind of deadline of them being in-house or anything, correct? Okay. Make sure.
And when they do come, we are still in our hybrid situation. They go to from school and home with you, or are they for school purposes in school?
I thought I was unmuted. Do I need to
You're
repeat
good.
that?
Yeah, so the iPads would actually be for in-school purposes. We would not be ordering enough for those to be the one-on-one devices. If the students are still working from home, that would be the Chromebook.
But when they're in school, they will not be sharing any devices, right?
Correct, and if they had a share, they would be sanitized like from the morning to the afternoon, or one day, like one group would use it, then they would sanitize it, and they have to do it, passing them around or anything this year at all.
Okay, then the last thing is we also had a unique opportunity with the Federal Communications Commission. And every year, the FCC works with the E-rate programs to subsidize our IT equipment. And this year, what they did is they allowed districts to go out for additional bandwidth. And they recognized the need from several school districts that are home, we just weren't providing the connectivity. And so I worked with the technology department, and what we decided was they gave us a quote from anywhere increasing from 2 gigs to 5. And right now we have 1, and we really felt that by doubling it to 2, that would ensure our connectivity for the next couple of years. And the increase is only $622 a month, but E-rate picks up 85% of that. So the district cost to that is very minimal. So we really took advantage of that. And then I do actually have one other. I just wanted to talk about the meal distribution for our remote learners today. Our scheduling right now is probably not ideal. We have our remote learner parents coming to the building between 9:30 and 10:15. And we understand that that is a very, very narrow window for our families to come. But we tried to base that on arrival time and dismissal time and cleaning time. A lot of variables have gone into that. So although it's set right now from 9:30 to 10:15, we're really going to be looking at that this week, but then also next week when all the students come in, and maybe possibly make some adjustments to that, because that 45 minutes is a very tight time frame for our parents to get here.
Well, it's not just tight, it's during the time the kids are in their learning.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So the only way of avoiding that would have to be do maybe a 7 o'clock or a 7:30 start. And then we start to get into other variables where the lunch hostesses, they would go home earlier, so then they wouldn't be around to do the late, the PM distribution. So we really kind of have to think about this one. Okay.
Since you're on meals, can I ask for the students who will be in person? I've seen in a couple of emails about students being sent home with meals, but what if they do not want to be sent home?
Yes. We all students have the opportunity to take a meal home under the summer food service program. And so what we did is we made a note that's going to be distributed to all families with their lunches. We didn't do it today. Today was a little bit hectic. And what it is, it's just a sheet of paper that if they do not want their kids to take a meal, they're just to sign it and send it back to the school. Because we never want to send home a meal that we're paying for, the government is paying for, and it doesn't get eaten. So those will be going out in the next couple of days. And then obviously for the rest of our students that return next week, those will go out with them. Okay, thank you.
So for 7.1, we have potential board action to post for a second reading or adopt the list of policies. If you remember back in September, almost all of these policies dealt with the updates in Title IX. And I believe to date, we have not heard any public comments or any questions on these policies. So I would recommend that we go ahead and adopt them at this point.
And if you could include in the motion that you're going to adopt with the admin recommendation, please.
I'll make a motion to adopt the policies with the recommendation.
Is there a second?
Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Callen.
Aye.
Mr. Hillman. As an aye. Mrs. Lammel.
Aye.
And Mrs. Egan.
Aye.
Thank you.
7.2, other. 8.0, new business. 8.1, potential board action to approve professional development with Dr. Readiness for the 2021 school year, not to exceed $11,400.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the professional development with Dr. Elaine Roberts for the 2021 school year not to exceed $11,400.
Is there a second? Greg Hillman with the
Got
second.
it, Mr. Hillman. Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Mrs. Callen, and Mrs. Egan.
Aye. 8.2, potential board action to appoint a representative and an alternate for the virtual 2020 Iasb Delegate Assembly taking place November 14th, 2020.
And if we could name who the representative and alternate would be in the motion.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to appoint Nancy Selzer as the representative for the IASB Virtual Delegate Assembly and Tiffany Egan as the alternate.
Mrs. Callen. Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mr. Hillman,
Aye. Aye.
Mrs. Egan.
Aye. 8.3, potential board action to authorize Studio GC to begin project design and request bids for capital projects. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Hillman. He was an aye. Mrs. Callen. Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle,
Aye.
and Mrs. Egan.
Aye. 8.4, authorize Studio GC to begin project design and request bids for pre-K playground at Ridge.
I'll make that motion.
Ms. Davenport,
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle, Mrs. Callen, Mr. Hillman,
Aye.
Mrs. Egan.
Aye. 8.5, potential board action to approve the digital equity formula grant.
I'll make the motion.
Mrs. Callen. Mrs. Lammle. Ms. Davenport. Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
And Mrs. Egan.
Aye. 8.6, potential board action to approve the purchase of Apple iPads for kindergarten and first grade students in the amount of $83,790 to be paid for with funds from Digital Equity Formula Grant.
I'll second it.
Mrs. Callen. Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Mrs. Egan.
Aye. 8.7, potential board action to amend current contract with Comcast from $1,600 per month to $2,222 per month.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Hillman on the second. Mrs. Lammle.
Aye.
Ms. Davenport.
Aye.
Ms. Callen. Mr. Hillman.
Aye.
And Mrs. Egan.
Aye. 8.8, hearing for the Board of Education to retain and exercise authority to vote on issues involving in-person remote learning. So we're going to open the hearing.
Before you open the hearing, just wanted to give a little bit of background on this. Over the summer, I had initiated conversations with the district attorney to determine if the board, if it was recommended if the board should vote or if it should be district administration. At that time, to allow for flexibility, the attorney had recommended that it be a district administration decision. And I just kind of reached around to the local districts, and many districts, their boards did vote for these plans, whether to reopen, what model to use. We did have some local boards who chose not to. That would be in Worth and in Oak Lawn, as well as our high school district, 218. But you had both Payless, Orland, Tinley, Ridgeland 122, all of their boards voted for it. So the hearing today is really to talk about whether or not the board moving forward wants to do that, or if they want to continue down the path that it's been. And I know we have our board who will be able to talk. Also at this time, anyone in the audience. And I would just ask that we make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak uninterrupted, and whenever you're ready to open up the hearing.
We're opening the hearing right now for the board to retain and exercise authority to vote on issues involving in-person and remote learning. Elaine?
I guess I'll get started because I think it's been pretty clear that I really have been the one to be more vocal to get this on the agenda. And I will start by saying I've had multiple conversations with Superintendent Thorne over the past couple weeks on this issue, and in no way, shape, or form is my item placed on the agenda any type of indication that I feel as if he or anyone from administration did anything nefarious or, through any type of malintent. But procedurally, I just feel like there's some important issues that we have to address, at least as a board, moving forward. This is not anything for me that I am addressing to the superintendent or administration. To me, this is a board issue that I think we at the very least owe to ourselves as a board and owe to the public to at least have a forthright conversation about it, and make a decision as to what we are going to do, versus, at least the way I felt, I was simply told that I would have no vote moving forward. If this were a decision that we made for one item thing, for example, if we simply voted on, and I'm going to be very, flippant with it, if we had to only vote on a chair that we needed to use or a one-time event that we had to do, to me, it would really be water under the bridge, okay? But I feel extremely strongly that procedurally, there needs to be some type of process if the board is not going to vote, that we vocally make that decision, or in the alternative, my position is I don't want to relinquish my vote. And I think that's something the board owes to the community to be able to make these hard decisions. But like I was saying, if it were simply one thing and we made the decision, to me it would be water under the bridge. But to be frankly honest, I don't foresee what I call these pandemic issues, meaning as going remote, coming back live, maybe going back remote. Who knows how many times that might happen, as unfortunate as that is. However, in as much as this is not a one-shot deal, and I feel like there are going to be multiple decisions moving forward, even though I feel, and I will blame myself more than anyone that, and I'll get into the chronology of it, in as much as I feel, though, that the decision hasn't been made as of this point, I think moving forward with the decisions that are forthcoming, that's something the board has to take ownership with. And if I may, I'd just like to run through like a little bit of a chronology. In August, actually, that's not even true. In June, let's start back from the beginning. Back in June, the state ISBE sent out a Part 2 transition guide about reopening the schools back into phase 3 at that point. The language within that packet, I actually happen to have with me the June 23rd one, which is the Part 3. It is the big packet. I believe it was emailed out to everyone, but the Part 2 transition guide. Page 2 of that guide specifically stated, and I'll quote, "Decisions around whether to conduct allowable activities during phase 3 will remain at the discretion of the school board and superintendent in consultation with the public health department." Consistent with that, the school board and administrative set up a task force in order to get the community together, teachers together, just various people from different, aspects of knowledge and expertise together to see, as we move forward and reapproach school starting, how is it going to look? What is going to be the best method for us to use? During the summer, there was a lot of passion between the board on what that committee looked like, what that committee was going to do. And I'll be frankly honest, there was a lot of disagreement, but to me, the disagreement was more productive in the sense that what is going to be the best versus simply abrasive and adversarial. However, consistent with all the conversations we've had back and forth, I think it was pretty clear that the intention was ultimately that there was going to be a vote by the school board. In June, when we were setting up and arguing about the task force, a lot of the issue that I had was a procedural issue with respect to having board members on a committee that the board was later going to vote on and vet that committee's decisions. I felt there was a conflict of interest. If the board was going to vote, members of the board shouldn't be on that committee making those decisions, regardless of whether that's correct or incorrect, or what the pamphlet says about who should have been on that task committee. The point is, the discussion was around the integrity of the vote of the back to school process we were going to use. Again, it was pretty clear that the board was going to vote on that particular issue. I've got correspondence saying on June 27th, 2020, with the next upcoming July 14th board session, which is when we were going to vote, I was demanding, requesting a special board meeting because my position at that point was I'm not going to be prepared to vote on July 14th on a model that we are going to hear for the first time on July 14th, give it to the public for comments on July 14th, and then have to vote the same day. So back on June 27th, I was requesting of the board and of the president a special session so we could at least hear the model, talk to the public, hear what they have to say, think about it, then come back on July 14th and vote. A couple days before the July 14th session, I was contacted and I was told there will be no vote by the board. The school's administration is going to make the decision. I will not speak for anybody else. What I was told was no one else was involved in that discussion as to whether or not the board should make that decision or not at that time, except for the school board president, the superintendent, and the attorney. I was simply told there is going to be no vote by the board. It is simply going to be administrative. So, here's where I lose sleep. When I was told this is how we're doing it, we talked to the lawyer, this is the way it's going to be. I honestly accepted it and I completely regret it. Okay. And I will take complete ownership as we go through this conversation. And I'm sure people are going to have comments. Well, why didn't you make a complaint about it back then? I think I've been pretty vocal about the integrity of the process and not just the final product since the beginning. But moving forward with this chronology, fast forwarding to September 28th, for the first time again, I was told for the first time that we're going back to school and we have a different model completely. I won't belabor that issue because I think we fully discussed that on the October 2nd special session, which is recorded and, go back and everyone can go back and look at it. However, at that point, it then became evident that for 3 weeks, this process was going on. And what I was told is the only people, at least from the board, that were aware that this different change in the model, the only people that knew that that was happening was the school board president. That's what I was told. I assume the other school board members were not aware that there was going to be a change to the model, and they learned about it at the same time I did. Again, I'm not casting blame, nor do I feel like turning back the hands of time to go back and rehash decisions made or not made, or that should have been made or not. But immediately, it was pretty clear, though, that the very least, not only did the board not vote, and for all I know, the board is going to say they don't want to vote, and that's fair, but that's something we have to let the public know, because I do want to vote. I never actively said I wasn't going to vote. I was simply told that I couldn't. But moving forward, as soon as I found out on September 28th, which was Monday, that there was a completely new model, it's been going on for 3 weeks, And then we have our board hearing on Friday. No surveys went out to the public. The public had no idea. And everything happened in really a fast forward way, which I don't think should have happened for a number of reasons, especially when a board member was aware that there was changes going on. But with that said, and moving forward, what I then did is I took it upon myself to do some research. I contacted several attorneys as to what is the practice. I Googled it. What are people doing? You know, what really, I mean, I don't know if anyone sitting on this board does that type of law to say who decides whether or not we have that vote or not. I think it's pretty clear that it is definitely a vote that should be retained by the school board. And I'll tell you why I think that. And at least moving forward, like I said, I mean, you can't turn back the hands of time. And I can't imagine going back and doing anything that would, at this point, negatively affect the students. The last thing I want at this point, and I would hope that other board members would want at this point, is to create a gigantic mess that then prevents kids from continuing on with school now that they're finally back in the school. I think we need to move forward, but in order to move forward with integrity, I think we have to do it the right way and take ownership of these votes and these extremely impactful decisions. But here's why I think it is something that the board should be voting on. Two things I heard that A, it's administrative, and B, that it would be micromanaging. And I think neither of those hold water in any way, shape, or form. I think these, quote, pandemic issues that we've been dealing with, remote learning, coming back, hybrid, COVID, quarantining, personal protective gear, these are probably the most impactful decisions that have ever been made by this school board, probably since its inception. I think no one could have ever predicted the kinds of decisions that administration has been making, that parents have been dealing with, and the board has been dealing with. To call them administrative, I think, really holds a blind eye to the significance of what's going on. Micromanaging away. I mean, if we're going to sit here and talk for 20 minutes about what kind of chairs the teachers should be using, whether they swivel or hold backpacks, what color the playground equipment is going to be. If we're going to sit here and have those conversations, how is conversations about decisions that will truly affect kids' education moving forward for the next year be micromanaging? I just don't think that's correct. On June 4th, like I said, the Iasb reiterated that the pandemic issues are decisions of the school board. That was June 4th. On June 23rd, when the Iasb sent out their newest starting 2021 school year, they never retracted that. They never said, no, these aren't school board decisions. And to be frankly honest, they are in fact all, the decisions that have been made are all things that are traditionally school board decisions. Going to Board of Education Policy 2.20, which is the powers and duties of the Board of Education. Number 6, entering contracts. Well, we've done plenty of that. We've done plenty of changing and entering of contracts because of the pandemic issues, including busing, including sanitation. These are all things that are under the umbrella of the pandemic issues that we've been forced now to deal with. Providing adequate physical facilities, that's number 7. I think that's definitely been something we've had to deal with when we were dealing with bringing kids back in a safe manner because of COVID, with respect to spacing, how they're going to walk down the hallways. Do we have adequate room? What rooms will we be using? These are definitely decisions that I think are under number 7, providing, constructing, controlling, and maintaining adequate physical facilities. And if you look at the packet, which we were supposed to be following under page 38, it discusses that same very issue. You know, how are we going to deal with hallways, traffic through hallways, our spaces? These are all things that are absolutely contemplated under the board's authority. Under number 9, approving curriculum and educational services. Well, if that's not what we're dealing with right now, I really don't know what we would ever vote on that would encompass number 9, approving curriculum and educational services. that's definitely something we're dealing with remote learners. That's something we're dealing with. Do all remote learners have the same exact curriculum that kids that are coming back to school with? I know there was an issue with respect to honors math. Definitely we were discussing, how we're going to do Zoom live, how are we going to do synchronous learning. Let me take a look here real quick. And it even says, under our packet again, under transition page, part 3, it says, assessments should be made and data used to modify the anticipated curriculum. Definitely something contemplated that is going to have to be a major decision by school boards. Evaluation of the educational program. I think that's something we asked. How are we objectively testing that kids are progressing through the remote model? How are they progressing through this hybrid model? What are we doing to check them? That is definitely something that is within the scope of authority of the board. Establishing the school year, number 14 of the Board of Education 2.20 powers and duties. I believe under our pandemic guidelines, it says we can adjust the school year. It says on page 19, school districts may choose to provide a longer school year that starts earlier so that higher need students can receive additional instructional time to address learning loss, social and emotional needs, and academic gaps. Okay, well, that's clearly within the board's authority under 14, establishing the school year. What other decisions? Providing student transportation services. That's something under Board of Education Policy 2.20 that's within the authority of the school board. Well, haven't we been arguing over how we're going to bus the kids back and forth to school? Is the buses going to be sanitized? How are we going to get the kids now to extra daycare issues through the village? I believe busing, we have to, we just entered a contract a couple sessions ago. Definitely within the purview of Board of Education's powers and duties. How about number 17, entering into joint agreements with other boards to establish cooperative educational programs or provide educational facilities? I believe we're signing a contract, an intergovernmental agreement with the Park District so that we can provide daycare and other facilities for students that can't get daycare on their own because of the hybrid model that we've chosen. Okay, well, we're definitely doing now, number 17. We are in fact entering joint agreements to provide educational facilities. The village is going to provide us an educational facility for the PM remote learning for students who can't either take care of themselves at home or can't, get their own daycare. To call any of these items micromanaging or to call any of these items administrative, it just completely goes against the whole nature of the board. Okay, so that's my my legalese of it. But here's the more, and not even more important, but another important thing. How about public accountability? As a school board, our responsibility is to advocate on behalf of the community and make sure they are heard through us, through our votes, through our conversations, through our decisions. And I don't think any one person on this board, I will not speak for themselves, I will speak for myself, but I'm thinking no one on this board can truly, in their pure of heart intent, say that the community was properly represented over the last 4 weeks. I think that would be a disservice to the public to say that. I think there was no communications with respect to how we were going to move forward, the fact that there was going to be changing. And to be frankly honest, when you're making decisions that are this big, the buck really has to start with the school board. And I'm not going to say, again, there's any malintent, but I feel, and Dr. Thorns can answer if he got any negative phone calls the day after or the day that, the surveys were due as to who was coming back and who was not. I will say that the phone calls or any negative responses to any decisions that are made should lie with the school board. We are the ones who are voted in to represent the community. If the community doesn't like something, they should come to us. They will come to us if we are the ones who vote. We cannot hide behind administration to make very impactful difficult decisions so that we can shirk from any responsibility to the community. I think it's pretty clear the community was more than half, at least in the beginning, whether or not they want to come back or not. But it is definitely a really hotly contested item. And to be frankly honest, I think the board is remiss to push that responsibility and that accountability to administration. They've got their own issues they're dealing with. Their hands are full. They're dealing with curriculum, education, recommendations. For us to simply take the recommendation and vote yes doesn't take a lot of effort, but what it does is it takes ownership. And it's really just, if you can't make the tough decisions and take ownership of them, I don't think you should be on a school board. And to push those decisions and those types of accountability issues back to administration, I just don't think it's appropriate. I think the community wants to be heard. The community needs to be heard through their board members, and simply to put it on administration is just, it's not copacetic. And honestly, I think it's weak. So like I said, I mean, moving forward, I mean, what's my issue? I guess my issue is legitimacy. Doing some research on my own, speaking to outside counsel, figuring things out a little bit. It just seems to me that if the board doesn't want to make the decision, if they feel this is not something we want to do, vote on it and tell the public it was in front of me and I made the decision and I'm going to push it to administration. That's all I'm saying. Moving forward, let's do this with some legitimacy. Instead of being told we're not going to vote, well, then let's say, if you don't want to vote, say you don't want to vote. Say it should be administration. I don't think it should be administration. And obviously I'm going to vote that it shouldn't be administration. I think the board should take ownership, but at least let's be honest and forthright. And if someone is going to tell me I can't vote, I'd rather give that vote up than someone simply tell me I'm not voting, especially on something that's this important. It's just too big of a deal. And, if the board feels, no, we like things the way they are, then so be it. But let's be transparent about it. Let's be completely transparent about it. I mean, I keep getting harassed and, the comments and the text because I like holding special sessions. And it's not because I have nothing better to do in my life. Quite the opposite. It's because I take this very seriously. And I've gotten a number of correspondence where I'm saying, we need a special session just to keep the public apprised of what's going on. There is no more ultimate method of accountability than by voting, at least for board members. And that's it basically in a nutshell. I'm obviously going to respond to a lot of people that have things to say, but I honestly think, to me, I've said it numerous times. I've said it when I set up the recordings back in December of 2019. I said it when I had issues with the task force that was set up. I think I've made it clear throughout the last few weeks for sure as well. I think legitimacy of the process is extremely important, and you can't, in good faith, put your heart behind decisions when the process to get there was flawed. And since we can't change the past, if it's simply, make the decision now and moving forward, then I say let's just, have the cojones to make the decision and move forward. Now watch, my thing was muted and I had to start back from the beginning.
Anybody else on the board have anything to say? I have a few things just in response to some of the things that you've brought up in no particular organized fashion. One of the things you said was let's be transparent, and I'm going to be completely transparent that at this point we are beating a dead horse. The legitimacy of the process was also brought up. This process, and you referenced it being flawed, when this process has been ongoing since the schools shut down, and every one of us who has been informed at every board meeting and came prepared and had conversations outside of board meetings with Dr. Thorne had all of the information necessary within every board meeting. And when there were a few parents who spoke up at the last meeting and didn't understand the process of board meetings, and that an emergency meeting has to be called when it is in a timely manner, something that has to be done. I don't think that that constitutes community members not being informed about what we're doing. I think there was a lack of understanding of how a board works in the first place. If you go back and watch any one of our board meetings since the shutdown, this is all that has been talked about. The entire school district, every single member, whether it is the administrators, the teachers, the students, parents, everybody has had to shift and pivot numerous times. And one thing that's been said over and over and over since March has been flexible and fluid. I think that by saying that people are going to shirk from responsibility by not wanting a vote is completely, I'm going to say irresponsible on your part to bring that up, because there isn't a member here who is not dedicated and coming to board meetings and having every bit of responsibility that they need to have on a daily basis, not just showing up twice a month to meetings. I think we as a board would be remiss to take this on in the way that you are saying, and to take this away from the administrators who are our boots on the ground. And in no way is what all of these decisions and discussions, we have been involved in the process to the extent that we should be. But when you look back, as you brought up kind of the timeline, at the end of the task force, which was, I don't know, 14, 16, 18 hours over the period of 6 weeks or however long that was. Lost my train of thought. Hours, not weeks. At the end of that time, the very first thing that Dr. Thorns brought up was that the committee was unable to make a decision. So to think that this should come down to 7 votes when the committee as a whole, with the people who are involved on a daily basis, could not even agree and come to one model because of everybody's opinions, to think that the 7 of us are in any better state to do that than the people who are here every single day, or to think that parents should weigh in on what they think is educationally sound for they're looking at their children, not the whole system. And that's what our administrators are here to do, is to make those tough decisions as a system. We are here to approve or disprove monetary, financial things. We have all of those discussions and conversations when it comes to any type of instruction, chairs, as you brought up, but ultimately, those are still the administrator's decisions. And through our conversations, they want to have us approve the things that they're suggesting. That I cannot name one decision that was ever made that was not well thought out or had tons of debate inside and outside of the administrator's offices. So to my point is, this is exactly why this is not supposed to come to a board vote. Tirza?
Getting there. I thought about this a lot and everything like that, and I see Elaine's point, and I also see the other point, and it depends on which vote you're looking at. As a board, our job, like we said, I look at myself as my board as I'm a fiduciary steward to the school district, and we establish the mission and the purpose of what the school board is to do. We have a strategic plan. We hire a superintendent to be the boots on the ground, the guy or the girl or whoever it is, to take what we want as a board and what is good for the community and put it into practice. And then the superintendent hires the other administrators and things like that. So I look at the whole fact that we have, as a board, granted him the ability to do that. We have voted. We have hired him. We have voted. We have taken him as the person that is going to make these types of decisions. So I look at the whole fact of maybe not necessarily micromanaging, but we have given him that ability to do those types of things. And I think that is something that we have granted him the ability to do. And this happened to be one of them. That's the way I look at it. And I agree that I see what you're saying about like saying, yeah, we have to make that decision at that. But I believe we've made that decision in giving him the ability to do it. So I don't think that we're not, I don't feel like any of us are shirking our responsibilities by not voting necessarily on the hybrid or non-hybrid model. I hope I made that, explain that well. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Christy? Can you unmute her?
I'm unmuted, but is it safe? I know last time it took 27 minutes, so I just want to make sure. I'm sorry for coming in late. I appreciate, Elaine, all the effort and hard work that you put into what you said. I came in late, so I hope that I heard most of it, not just the tail end of it.
Do you want me to do it again?
No, I think the most of it. And I do appreciate what you're coming from. As far as it goes for the process and the determining of this, again, I was on the committee and I don't know that I thought it was flawed either. I think that there was a lot of people who worked really hard to try and come up with a plan. All the notes were available to all the board members for the whole entire planning process. And as a representative of the community, I do listen to parents. I see parents out at baseball and other areas, and I try to take every single thing that I hear, whether it be a parent talking to me directly or stuff that I see on social media, and address it with Adam to hopefully represent as many people as I can. So to insinuate that if one of us or myself decided that I don't want the vote to be in the hands of the board, I specifically asked that question, why aren't we voting on the plan when it first came out? Because I am a teacher and the school that I'm at, the board did vote on the plan. And from my understanding is that by not voting, we give the administrators flexibility to pivot, as Tiffany kind of used that word, but to have to change it. And I feel like with what's going on in the world, things do have to change consistently and constantly because numbers are changing daily. Things are changing daily. So I just wanted to add those 2 cents to my thoughts on some of the things going on.
Thank you, Chrissy. Anybody else on the board? Before we see if there's public. Elaine?
Well, Tirza had said when she was speaking, us hiring Superintendent Thorns was us giving him authority. However, we never gave the superintendent authority to make these decisions. We never procedurally had a conversation and said, we feel this is the best thing to do and this is what we were going to do. Unless someone can disagree, and Dr. Thorns, please correct me if I'm wrong. When I was told about a day or so before I thought we were voting, getting ready for that vote, I was then told, you will not be voting. I was not asked what I thought about voting. I was not told conversations were happening with the school board president. I was not told that multiple conversations had been going on already with the attorney. I was simply told, you will not vote. That was the first and only time any type of discussion about not voting to me was brought up, because within a week or so before that, I got correspondence saying, I do not feel comfortable voting on the same day that I'm going to be presented a model and hear in the public talk for the first time. So in as much as there's any type of indication that this was a voluntary thing, let's be straight. I was never asked what my thoughts were. I know we never had a board session or special session discussing how we wanted to handle that authority. I was simply told right before the vote, you won't be voting, administration. That's why during the board meeting, I said again, so you're saying we're not voting? We're not voting. It's on the TV. And then I said, did you talk to a lawyer? And this again is during the session. Yes, I talked to a lawyer. Well, there you go. It was never discussed. There was never a discussion that we're having right now about what is the most appropriate thing to be doing. So to suggest this was given is a misconception and it's misconstrued. As far as there being changes, well, so what? So what if there are changes? That is even more reason to retain this type of decision-making authority. If there's another change in, let's say, COVID numbers or flu numbers over Christmas break, when it's time to bring the students back, and another decision has to be made, are we coming back hybrid or are we not coming back at all? I don't want to make the same mistake that happened between September 28th, the 3 weeks preceding that, and October 2nd, when the public was floored, and I was floored, and what I was told, no other board members knew for those 3 weeks that there was going to be a change to the hybrid model. Fool me once, that cannot happen again. And the way we can ensure that that does not happen again is we retain the right to vote. Because then if a decision happens, we can make that decision, we can involve the public, we can send surveys, we can do what we're supposed to do as a school board. So the fact that things change is the exact reason why we need to retain the vote. If it was a one-time deal, it's water under the bridge. But I foresee a lot of changes, a lot of decisions are going to have to be made between now and probably the end of the school year. So that to me is even more important to say to your constituents, you know, I hear you, I'm going to advocate for you, I'm going to make sure you're being involved, I'm going to make sure you're not cut out. You know, if everyone says, oh, we've known every single thing that was going on, am I the only one who didn't know for 3 weeks before September 28th that there was a change in the model we were going to use? I was told for the first time on September 28th, which was Monday, the model was changed. It had been discussed for 3 weeks between administration and the school board president, and no one else was aware. So unless that's not true, we weren't aware of what was going on and kept apprised, because I would then assume based on that information that was given to me, none of the board members were aware that there was a change to the hybrid model. If none of the board members were aware that there was a change in the hybrid model, how can you sit here and say the community was also involved and not cut out from the process? It's just mind-boggling, to be frankly honest. It's just a really mind-boggling thing. The only way to absolutely ensure that this never happens again, make sure that we're representing the community, make sure the community is involved, make sure we're sending surveys, to make sure that we're being told everything by the school board president, to make sure that we are completely aware of everything that's going on, is we need to vote. If the decisions are so great, which they've been, then so what? Let the superintendent make a recommendation and then vote yes. Why is that so hard to do? I don't know. I guess that's it. I mean, I can talk about this all day, but I don't think anyone wants to see.
Any other board members? Anybody in the audience who would like to speak up? Anyone in the audience? Okay, last call, board members, before we close the hearing. Okay, we are going to close the hearing for the Board of Education to exercise authority to vote on issues involving in-person and remote learning. 8.9 potential board action for the Board of Education to retain and exercise authority to vote on
I think it's pretty
issues
clear that I'll make a
involving
motion.
in-person remote learning. Is there a second?
Can I ask a question? Now, just out of curiosity, so at what point do we stop voting on every little piece? That's my biggest concern, is that it will be everything to changing the time that we start at school. And the time that it's done and what a half day is, at what point does it become not a board vote and it's an administrative? That's my biggest thing is where does that, I don't want to tie Adam's hands to be like, okay, well, now we're here. Now we're finding that the time start is not working with the bus company, so now we have to, can't do anything. We now have to call the board together to make a decision because we have to change the time of school because of this hybrid learning. That's my biggest thing is I don't want to tie the hands of the ability to be flexible and fluid. That's my biggest concern, to be honest with you. More than I agree with you, Elaine, that we need to say that we're with this, but I'm afraid that by doing this, we will now make it every single little thing regarding this hybrid model will have to be voted on. And I don't know where that ends. That's my problem, my question. And I don't know if anybody can answer that question.
I think the vast majority of schools have taken this to board vote, and they just seem to have too much of an issue with those types of minor logistics. I think it's pretty clear when you have a decision as to whether or not we're calling our kids back.
We've already closed the
Or-
hearing.
I mean, I've got the-
There is a motion on the table and we need to see.
But when we notified during the emergency August 17th meeting, you know what, we're just gonna keep kids home. That's a pretty much a no-brainer.
I think it was a rhetorical question. It wasn't meant to be for you. Okay, but it was a
She asked a
rhetorical
question, and if
question.
you ask a
So
question
there
that
is
makes
a motion
implications, I
on
think I
the
should be able to
table.
respond likewise. I mean, obviously the implication is
It
it is
wasn't,
such a
she
can of
wasn't asking you a
worms that as
direct
soon as we do something,
question.
we're be too stupid to be able to make any
That
decisions.
doesn't, we need a
Rhetorical question means that its purpose was to make people think. It was to make people think. That's a rhetorical question. You ask a rhetorical question,
There is a motion on
not
the table.
because
Is
you
there
want
a
an answer, but you're trying to prove a point. So if the hearing was closed and you're allowing rhetorical questions, I guess it's opened again.
Opportunity for visitors to speak. All right.
Okay, 13.0, adjourn to closed session for the,
Wait, I have something to say. Sorry, because I am the.
There's a lot of mics on, so it's very
today,
muty.
So I'm going to take the president's prerogative. I just want to take a minute to thank all of the administrators and teachers. We don't have any teachers today, but lots of administrators in our audience for really pivoting on the spot and moving forward with a plan that encompasses students first. And it is very evident in this type of a model that everybody is putting the students first and not themselves and their own families. And that's happening in schools all across the country that are starting to go back in person. And I know our students are excited and parents are grateful, whether they are staying at home or hybrid, for all that everybody is able to do. This has been nothing but constant changes since March. And schools are notorious for not taking on changes well, not because they're unwilling, but because there are so many moving parts, as has been evident through just this one small part. Because this is still one small part, as huge as it is, to all that goes into a school. So I just want to make sure to thank all of our teachers and administrators for their dedication, their relentlessness at getting our kiddos back in. And it's nothing short of commendable. So I really hope that our community can pull together, keep their safety and mitigation up to high standards so that we can keep our kids in school as long as possible. It does take a village to raise a child. And I think that our community really needs to pull together, no matter what you believe in, to keep our kids as safe here in person.
13.0, adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussion of the
Excuse me.
appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance or dismissal
I
of
think
specific
Greg had his
employees of
hand
the
up.
public body
I
or
did.
legal counsel for the public body, including
Hello?
hearing testimony on a complaint
Never
lodged
mind.
against an
Adam, I
employee of the
think Greg
public
had his
body
hand up.
or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act as defined in the Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1. The discussion of collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or the representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees as described in Section 2C2. Discussion of security measures and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or reasonable potential danger to the safety of the employees, students, the staff, and the public or public property is defined in Section 2C8. Discussion of pending or probable and imminent litigation against, affecting, or on behalf of the district is defined in Section 2C11, and the discussion of minutes of prior meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act is defined in Section 2C21 for the purpose of review, approval, or release of such minutes. We will not be discussing student discipline as defined in Section 2C9.
And before we enter closed session, Mr. Hillman does want to speak.
I hope you can hear me. What was the result of 8.9? There was too much confusion going on with the mics being open.
It passed. I'm kidding.
There was a motion, but there was no second, so there was no vote.
Thank you.
Do you have to read that all again to go into closed session, or can we just say the time?
No, I heard it.
Going into closed session at 7:45.
Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Is there a second, or shall we stay in open?
Greg seconded it.
I have Chrissy on the second. Mrs. Callen? Oh, I'm sorry, it was Greg? I'm sorry. Mrs. Callen? Mrs. Petropoulos?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Hellman?
Aye.
Got it. Ms. Davenport? Mrs. Lammle? Mrs. Egan?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. And those of you watching on live stream, we are going to discontinue it for closed